recovery efforts. We've been doing a lot of these press conferences. You are used to seeing many of our ministers here. Today's extra special because the main person presenting today will be our Prime Minister. And so it is a very special press briefing that we have for you today. I need to acknowledge those who are here with us. Of course, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, our Prime Minister, and the person leading the charge and leading all of us in cabinet to do as much as we can to support everyone across Jamaica that has been affected. And of course, I'm giving you another title, the Honorable Desmond Mackenzie, the Minister of Local Government and Community Development, and also co-chair of the Cabinet Committee that's responsible for relief efforts. Dr. Andrew Wheatley, the Minister with responsibility for science, technology, and special projects. We have some permanent secretaries here. I know I see Ambassador Rocky Mead and Dr. Kassan Troop, Commander Alvin Gale, Director General of ODPEM, who's been working so hard in the short time he's been there. Miss Lilia Brunustik, World Bank's Country Director for the Caribbean, right, Lilia? I just call her Lilia. We also have with us today Linville Freeman, the Chairman of the National Housing Trust. We also have Martin Miller, the Managing Director of the NHT, and many members and support staff from various ministries, departments, and agencies. And we have a very special guest today with us, Romesh. Those of you who don't know who Romesh is, something's wrong with you. He's an entertainer and producer extraordinaire in Jamaica, and one of the examples of Jamaicans really helping where they can. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what he is doing and why we're so happy that he's here at our press conference today. And of course, as always, members of the media, Jamaicans watching at home and abroad, good afternoon to you again. We're going to go through the presentations very quickly today. First, we're going to get an update from the World Bank in relation to their assessment of the damage. So they are going to come and do the damage assessment presentation, and then that will be followed by Commander Alvin Gale, who will be giving you updates on the response since Hurricane Melissa, and then we will have our Prime Minister speak after that, and then we'll go to questions from the media. So first up, we have Lilia, who is going to do the damage assessment. A lot of people are wondering what's the cost. We know it's a whole heap, but Lilia is going to be much more refined in that. And so over to you, Lilia. It's really good to have you here, and thank you to the World Bank Group and all the other international development partners for all the support you have been giving Jamaica. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. Do we have the presentation? Do we have the presentation? Yeah. So I would like to start with saying that this assessment is part of the World Bank collaboration with the Inter-American Development Bank and the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC. It will inform a more detailed evaluation of damages and economic losses, which is being led by the Planning Institute of Jamaica and includes the partners that I just mentioned. Before presenting the results, it's important to establish what this assessment is and what this assessment is not. So GRADE, Global Rapid Post-Disaster Damage Estimation, is a remote approach that uses sophisticated techniques like catastrophe modeling, satellite imaging, social media to estimate the direct cost of damage in a short time, in a matter of 2-3 weeks, to inform early decision-making. Results are given by parish and by 4 asset classes. These are residential, non-residential, infrastructure, and agriculture. However, the GRADE assessment only assesses physical damage. It does not consider economic losses, and it does not consider the additional costs for building better. It's only like-for-like replacement costs. The GRADE methodology, which the World Bank has developed and used across the world, is meant to support early decision-making in the aftermath of shocks and events. And it actually delivers quite a high level of accuracy of about 90%. Very quickly about the data we used: scientific event data, vulnerability data, remote sensing data, historical damage data, built assets data, census and socioeconomic data, and reported damages in the official sources, media, and social media. Okay. And now the key results. The total cost of damage is estimated at 8.8 billion US dollars, which is 41% of the gross domestic product of Jamaica in 2024. As I said, this number assumes only physical damage. The economic damage will, of course, be also large, and often from our experience, it's even larger than the physical damage. But this will be estimated later when the Dala assessment is completed. Parishes of St. Elizabeth, St. James, Westmoreland experienced the worst damage, and these three parishes account for a total of 5.5 billion US dollars, or 63% of the country's total damage. This slide shows total damages by parish for four categories that I mentioned before: residential buildings, non-residential buildings, infrastructure, and agriculture. I would like to note that the breakdown by parish should be taken as indicative, and this will be verified in the future estimates. The first one, residential building damages, account for 3.7 billion US dollars. And this is 41% of the total estimated damages. And this is the largest category of damages. It includes houses and their contents, and also includes mixed-use buildings, which are characterized as residential. The second category is non-residential buildings and their contents damage. It accounts for 20% of the total damage, equal to 1.8 billion US dollars. And this includes commercial, industrial, tourism, public buildings, and non-residential qualified as mixed-use buildings and their contents. The third group is infrastructure damage. It was estimated at 2.9 billion US dollars, which accounts for 33% of the total damage. And this includes power networks, water networks, telecoms, seaports, jetties, coastal structures, airports, roads, bridges, and equipment. And the final group is agricultural damages, which is estimated at 389 million US dollars, with notable damages to the fishing sector, livestock, dairy, cash crops, vegetables, and fruit trees. I would like to repeat that this is only physical damage, and that economic damages from lost sales, tourism, lost tourism arrivals, and so on are likely to be at the same level or even of a high level of magnitude. And this actually is true about, very true about the agriculture sector, where economic damages are likely to be higher than the physical damages. This is the best snapshot at this time, which is, as I mentioned, 90% accurate. We will be issuing a joint press release with the IDB, And there will be a report which will be available to everyone. All the data, all the information will be open source. Everybody will be able to use this data and will serve as a basis for future assessments. In closing, I would like to say that the total estimated damages exceed any recent historical event. This means that the recovery will be an enormous and long-term task. It will require a well-coordinated strategic approach to ensure speed, efficiency, and transparency, and a whole of society effort from local institutions, the private sector, and from communities. Grade estimated costs of replacement don't take into account the building forward better, but it is important to build forward better, so the costs of replacing the damaged infrastructure and damaged assets will be higher than this assessment. The substantial residential damage, although significant, gives an opportunity to build forward better, and building regulations will be critical in this regard, but the benefits can be as high as $6 for every dollar spent. And my final message is, if we work together, reconstruction can be an opportunity to reimage Jamaica and to rebuild a resilient Jamaica for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Lilia, for that very sobering presentation, and thank you to the entire World Bank team and the IDB team that worked so very hard on this assessment. You heard it, $8.75 billion US in damages. And in the graph, it showed you St. Elizabeth, St. James, Westmoreland, Trelawney, Manchester, and St. Anne in that order were the most affected parishes. And she said it's just physical damage that she's looking at. There is a lot more that of damage that's there. So that's a big number. Tells you the gravity of the situation we have before us. And I know the Prime Minister will be speaking to how we are going to be moving forward better in the way that Lilia has also put it. Up next, we're going to get some updates from ODPEM. ODPEM is the leading agency in the relief effort in Jamaica. And we have a new head commander who's been coming every press conference and doing such a fantastic job. And it's a difficult job because the scale is something we've never seen anywhere. And so we're here to support you, Commander. We know that work is hard, but we see the work and we're very appreciative of that. And we thank you for coming to tell Jamaica and the world what it is that ODPEM is doing.
Good afternoon, Honorable Prime Minister, members of the Cabinet, PSAs, colleagues, the persons gathered here in the room, media, Jamaica, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this update. As at today, the following figures obtained in the Melissa recovery situation. We have confirmed 45 fatalities. This number has not changed since my last briefing, with 9 cases remaining under investigation. 15 persons still remain missing, and our thoughts remain with their families and loved ones. What I'll indicate about the missing number is that the number continues to evolve. Some persons have been coming off the list, and a number of persons have also joined the list. As of today's date, 97 emergency shelters remain active, housing some 1,296 persons. Since my last briefing, 167 persons have returned home or found alternate safe accommodation. As it relates to communities still cut off, no communities remain inaccessible at this time. A number of communities, however, are impacted by rising groundwater. In the parish of Clarendon, Bogue, in the parish of Manchester, Comfort Hall, Content District, Evergreen, and Harmons, in the parish of St. Elizabeth, Brighton, Newmarket, and sections of Santa Cruz, in the parish of Hanover, Chigwell, in the parish of St. Anne, Douglas Castle, and Pedro River. Approximately 31% of our population remains without electricity. Prioritization efforts continue in critical economic zones in St. James, St. Anne, and Trelawney. 24% of the NWC system remains offline, primarily due to damage in western parishes and power instability in some regions. Telecommunications have shown steady progress, with providers restoring just about 70% of mobile sites, which on average, over 90% of the daily active users of mobile networks are able to access mobile service, to include mobile data service. On the logistics and emergency relief front, the ODPEM continues to coordinate national and international support through the National Emergency Operations Center. The national relief effort today remains robust. To date, the national system has delivered over 115,000 packages to include sanitization and hygiene kits, and reaching some 282 communities across the nation. Having conducted further assessments of needs, the JDF distribution footprint has expanded. There are now some 7 distribution hubs and almost 26 humanitarian supplies areas, whilst they maintain air, ground, and small unit delivery operation in the deep rural corridors. To date, some 590 flying hours have been dedicated to this task. The World Central Kitchen has to date served over 1.3 million meals right across the island, particularly in our harshest, most hit parishes. The ODPEM continues to prioritize underserved communities, including areas in St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Manchester, St. James, Trelawney, and Hanover. The damage assessment report, as delivered earlier, is congruent with the rapid needs assessment conducted through the SEDEMA and the initial damage assessment reports conducted through the ODPEM. As indicated before, the parishes of Westmoreland, St. James, St. Elizabeth remain most affected. By way of building counts for dwellings, approximately 156,000 dwellings were damaged. Of that number, some 24,000 were total losses. The Ministry of Health and Wellness continues to expand its operations through mobile clinics, mobile pharmacies, and mental health teams going into various communities. Public health surveillance for leptospirosis, dengue, tetanus, and waterborne illness has commenced. A field hospital for the Barbados Defense Force will be set up in the Savannah area to bolster medical services in the western region. To date, more than 16,000 donors, both locally and overseas, have contributed to the GOJ disaster relief platform, totaling some 556 million Jamaican dollars. Churches and faith groups and other organizations continue in their efforts to provide invaluable large-scale distribution of food, clothing, care packages across the affected parishes. In closing, I want to thank the citizens of Jamaica, especially those most affected, for their patience and cooperation with the ODPEM as we continue to coordinate nationwide activities with all ministries, departments, and agencies. Jamaica's recovery from Hurricane Melissa is progressing at pace, particularly with the restoration of water, telecommunications, and the essential services. The national system, the ODPEM, the NEOC, ministries, utilities, security forces, and our international partners have demonstrated high levels of coordination, efficiency, and operational discipline. The coming weeks will determine the pace of long-term recovery, but the foundation of achievements thus far across the utilities, humanities, access, telecoms, and overall command architecture at this time suggests strong trajectory towards national stabilization and reconstruction. I thank you, and may God continue to bless Jamaica.
Thank you, Commander Gale, for those updates. And so without further ado, we have our Prime Minister coming to you to give his remarks, and we'll take questions after. So please welcome Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, our Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Minister. The purpose of this press briefing is to give some insight into the administrative and organizational management of the disaster. And that is the area that squarely falls in my office, the office of the Prime Minister. You would have noted that we have made certain changes to the government to increase the efficiency of the operations and management of the disaster, one of which would be the reassigning of ODPEM to the office of the Prime Minister. It is not unusual for the disaster management entity to be centrally located in the office of the Prime Minister. Indeed, in previous dispensations, this was the case. The reassignment of ODPEM to OPM, I would say, is not meant to be a permanent assignment. I have enough entities on my plate to deal with. But it is important because the Office of the Prime Minister can accelerate coordination and quickly remission entities. And for ODPEM, we had already undertaken a review, and we concluded that there was need for strengthening the mission and increasing its coordinating ability. I'm pleased to report that I have seen improvements in the functioning of ODPEM, and they were tasked to do a few things. One of them would be to strengthen their inventory management system, to put a system in place that delivers real-time information. They are well down the wicket with that through support from our Information Technology Authority. And the objective of that, the end objective of that, is to answer calls and support the whole idea of transparency. So eventually, and when I say eventually, very soon, as soon as the system is up and running, then we will be able to publish for the public to see what came in as donations and what went out as in terms of their usage and who were the beneficiaries. So the public will be able to see in real time what is the status of donations. That gives confidence to the public. It gives confidence to our donors as well. In these matters, there should be nothing secret, unless a donor country says, we don't want anyone to know what we have given you, which is highly unlikely and has not happened. But we want everybody to know. So we have to put a system in place, one that is reliable, and one that operates in real time, and one that is on time. And so ODPEM is working towards having this inventory management system in place. I've also instructed ODPEM to develop full situational awareness of the disaster space. One of the challenges that we have had, not just with this disaster, but with several other disasters, and that is as a result of the very high level of informality in Jamaica, is that sometimes there are communities that we simply don't know. They're not on the map. We know them traditionally by word of mouth. Informally, they are named and described, but you can't geographically identify them on a map. As a result of that, there may very well be communities that are not served in the disaster response. And so I have brought together, under ODPEM's coordinating responsibility under law, all the GIS systems supported by the Geospatial Data Management branch of the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development, to pull together all our GIS information, that is our geographical information systems, so that we can see, for example, where are all our schools, where are all our police stations, where are all our shops, where are all our, we've mentioned community centers, where are electrical installations, so that you can plan properly and be able to respond. So that is underway. The next time that Commander Gale reports, he should be able to give an update as to where these systems are, how they are being developed, and how they are being used in the disaster response. So we have brought together NWA, NEPA, the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, the JDF, I believe the JCF is also a part of it, but we intend to bring in all GIS information, have it coordinated in one central database so that we are properly able to respond to the disaster. Another element of the operations of ODPEM, which we have directed, is for them to rapidly scale up their assessment capabilities. And so in collaboration with the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, which already has an assessment core of social workers who are in the field, ODPEM would be more on the technical side of assessments, but they have to be coordinated. What we don't want is to have several assessors in the field going at different times, talking to the same people and getting everything confused. So we want to have one central core of assessors. So community and stakeholder relations assessments are part of government operations. So for example, the SDC would have some capabilities to do assessment. The Ministry of Labor and Social Security have said, the Ministry of Education, the NWA would all have assessment capabilities. The instruction given to ODPEM is to bring all of this together under one umbrella so that we can create a core of assessors that will be out in the field capturing data in a coordinated way. Why is this data important? Well, we need it to be able to determine, for example, what should be the level and scale of reconstruction grants that we give to people. And if we don't know the damage, then we are just randomly selecting a number to determine how much we should give to persons. So we need proper information. And secondly, if we don't actually know where the damage is, then how do we reach the people? And how do we plan proper routes and develop supply chains and so forth? So the data is very important. So I just wanted to report to the nation that ODPEM is making progress, and the purpose of the data is to improve the efficiency of the service delivery, but also to provide you with the information, verifiable information that you can use to make your own personal decisions about how you respond to the disaster. I wanted to just say a few words on shelters. Now, there is no question in my mind that more work needs to be done on the selection of shelters. And indeed, we may very well have to consider building shelters that are for that purpose. Or when we are building community facilities, to build them up to the standards that a shelter would require. Because in this disaster, many of the shelters that were prescribed as shelters were destroyed. And so some of the areas that you're seeing functioning as shelters were never prescribed as shelters. We just had to use them in the immediate passage of the hurricane. So this is something that we will have to consider. We are now at a point in the disaster where we will have to decommission shelters, demobilize the shelters. That creates some challenges, but why do we have to do this? Many, if not all of the shelters now are schools. And we have to get our schools back up for January. So we can't have the shelters, the schools being used as shelters. So what we have done, we have deployed the social workers and assessors from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security and from the Ministry of Local Government to go into these shelters. You would have heard that we have maybe just under 1,200 or 1,300 persons still in shelters, to go into these shelters and on a case-by-case basis, assess their needs and make recommendations, or where possible, implement solutions for the decanting of persons from these shelters. And that is underway. Our hopeful target is that we could decommission 90% of the occupants of the shelters from the shelters into alternatives. We are hopeful that we can do this. We're working very hard, but I can't stand here and give a definitive date that it would happen. But the public should know that we have started a process to humanely, with greatest consideration, decommission the shelters and find alternatives for the persons who are using them. I'm certain that this will lead to questions about what are we going to do for schools and when they will reopen. I was the Minister of Education many years ago, so I leave those questions to your capable Minister of Education. She did come to us with a tidy sum for the reconstruction of schools, but more will be said on that in another press briefing. I quickly want to turn to the issue of debris management. Now, by the use of satellite imagery and various other methodologies for determining quantity of debris, I believe it is the UNDP that published something which estimated that we have about 4.8 million metric tons of debris. 4.8 million metric tons of debris. I would say just round that up to 5 million metric tons of debris. Let me put that into context. That is about 480,000 standard truckloads to move. I want that to sink in. 480,000. I would say round that up to about 500,000 truckloads that we need to remove. The NSWMA, with the resources that they have, I think they have been doing a fantastic job. If we didn't purchase those 100 and odd trucks, in addition to some other amounts, I don't know what we would be doing today. Communities all over Jamaica that have been badly affected are now at risk, potential health hazards. And for the communities of West Green and Catherine Hall in St. James, they are of particular risk because they had a quite unique situation where their houses were flooded and there was a residue of mud, a deluge actually of mud, and it really created a problem. What we have done is I have put together a special team headed by Minister Wheatley and Minister Morgan, and I have assigned them to ensure that the debris management process is effectively administered on the ground in specific communities, not general garbage collection, but we have to do some targeted collection of debris. For example, in West Green and Catherine Hall. I'm pleased to say that the NSWMA, and in addition to the efforts of the mayor of Montego Bay, that they would have by now removed some. Well, my statement here says they have done about 1,300, but that was as of Monday. I'm being told that they are closer to 2,000 truckloads that they have moved from Catherine Estates and West Green. But I think the bigger thing to note is the deployment of 200 persons who we had, in addition to the deployment of the Jamaica National Service Corps from the JDF, about 100, a little bit more than a company size deployment. And they have been in the space working with the most vulnerable, our elderly and disabled and other persons who are infirm, who are just not able to clean up their own houses or move out their furniture. And they are helping. And so that is having an impact on the community. And we intend to use this model to focus on other areas. We're having in our sites, looking at communities in Falmouth and St. Anne's Bay. And of course, we have to go into areas like White House and Bluefields and those areas that have been significantly impacted. Of course, there is the very difficult situation in Black River as well. In further support of that, I have mobilized the UDC to take on some specific communities. In another press brief, I will give some information about what tasks we have given to various government entities to support the recovery. So I want to give hope to the people of Jamaica that though this figure of almost 500,000 truckloads is daunting and far greater than we have ever faced, because the challenge is not just to move the debris. Where do you store it? And how do you store it safely? And so we are examining all the options, including recycling, using the wood chippers to reduce the wood, including having a structured approach to the recovery of scrap metals, and other such strategies to make sure that we can properly manage this debris. But objective number one is to move the debris out of the space where people are living. We have started a process of emergency procurement. We need as many trucks as we can get. So we have started to look in the commercial trade here. I have asked President Ali and Prime Minister Motley to see what they have in their jurisdiction that we can purchase or could be loaned or granted to us. Prime Minister Motley has kindly offered us 4 compactor trucks, which would be of great help to us. And we have asked the government of China to support us in this regard as well, with heavy equipment trucks, compactors, bulldozers, and so forth, to help us with this huge problem of debris management. Now, let me just say this very quickly, because I know there's somebody who will be saying, and you just hire the trucks. Just hire the trucks. Yes, we do have quite a number of trucks hired, but I want Jamaicans to think of the disaster in the broader sense. That if you were to pull all the trucks out of general operations, what you would effectively do is slow down all the projects that are going on, all the other economic activity, which puts you back at square one, right? So it's a delicate balance. It's how do you treat with the emergency without creating another emergency? What you really want to do is to keep your economy going. In fact, you want your economy to start to move faster, grow faster, while you find, parallel and alternative ways of dealing with the disaster that exists. So yes, we will be using private trucks, as many of them as we can, but we know that as many trucks that we take out of the private trade, that's a construction project that is slowed up or an operation that has to stop. So it's just a limited resource, and we have to manage it very carefully. So we will have to expand the internal capacity of the various entities that are charged with this debris management. So yes, it's a big issue. We are working on it. We take note of the reports out of the Ministry of Health, where we have seen some cases, suspected leptospirosis and other cases of waterborne diseases or diseases that are common after such a disaster. I take this opportunity to appeal to all Jamaicans: be super careful in your environment. Be super careful about where you get water, and if you get water, please boil it if you can before, or use some form of treatment. It is absolutely important. In my travels around, I've seen, persons having fun in the springs that are popping up all over the place, and a lot of domestic activities taking place in those springs, I urge the greatest caution. I want to speak a little bit about the JDF and what the role of the JDF is in this operation. If we use an analogy of the body, ODPEM would be the brain of the operation. Or let's put it this way, ODPEM is the eyes and ears. But the hands and legs would be the JDF. They do the logistics. In the initial phase of the response, the JDF flew 600 hours of missions, 193 missions, and that would include search and rescue, medevac, delivery of aid, all kinds of operations. Just to say that I don't think the JDF gets all the recognition it deserves and the value of the service they give. I tell the story of a frantic call being made to me. I received it, and on the end of the line was MP James Robertson saying to me that there is a man stuck in the middle of a river, and he's apparently been there for a few days. His legs, one of his leg appeared to be broken, and he's not moving. We had to get proper coordinates, and the JDF flew and rescued him. That, of course, didn't make the news. That's one of many rescues that were done. So the JDF plays a very critical role in giving the capability to the plans that the government lays. Now, just to say, the JDF has just under 8,000 members. And it has deployed more than 2,000 in the direct operations of the disaster relief. Aside from the missions to deliver by air and by sea, by the way, because they have done delivery of packages by the Coast Guard, over 10,000 packages they have delivered. In addition to that, they manage the stores of some of ODPEM's donations and others that are given into the general donation pool. They do the packaging. They do the delivery to what we call the hub and spokes. So they have established they have established several centers, several hubs, you would call them, where goods are moved from the main warehouse to those areas, and then they have some additional substations, if you want to call them, where the goods are moved to them, and then they move into the community. So they have established an effective supply chain, and they are providing security for the convoys, they are providing security for the communities, and they are actually out there delivering packages. But this cannot continue forever or for much longer. We will transition very shortly, and I want to prepare the public for the transition that will happen. The JDF will maintain the hub and spoke operation, that is moving supplies from the main warehouse to the substations all around the country. But it won't be so much a focus on the humanitarian food and care packages. They will have to shift now to the distribution of construction and repair and rebuilding materials. And they will also have to shift from giving out packages to helping in the reconstruction and rebuilding of critical public infrastructure, and indeed to assist private individuals who are elderly or infirm or otherwise unable to do so themselves. But before they can do that, the engineering corps has been called back to fix up their own barracks and camp facilities, because the JDF also was impacted. So as soon as they have repaired their own installations, then we will be repurposing almost the operations of the JDF to be moving in now the building materials and to help in communities to do reconstruction. This is necessary because you would have heard President Ali and Prime Minister Motley and others saying, hey, we want to send members of our engineering corps here to assist in the rebuilding. So we definitely must have a complementary corps to support those activities. And other countries, which we are in dialogue with, will be sending members of their engineering team. So very soon you're going to see a full deployment of the JDF along with other engineering corps from other countries coming to assist us with the rebuilding of critical public institutions and to assist the infirm and the vulnerable in rebuilding private facilities. This is necessary to be done because after a while it becomes very costly to be using the resources of the JDF to be delivering packages. But there is a reality which the communities that are affected should start to bear in mind, and indeed the wider Jamaica. In the initial phase of the disaster, you would have seen an influx of NGOs, concerned persons, concerned Jamaicans coming in to give. You see it all on social media, everybody handing out packages and so forth. In another couple of days, you're going to see that dry up. Some are going to return. That they have been here so long is quite exceptional. Some do have staying power. They will stay with us for a little longer, but it is going to taper off, and which is why the government had to strategically build out a system that could endure and last and be able to continue to deliver even when private and NGO philanthropy dries up. So we are very appreciative of everything that has been donated and given so far, and at this point I'd acknowledge Ramesh and indeed the wider entertainment community that has come out and given. I think they should be commended and lauded, and indeed I'm encouraging them to continue as long as possible to give. It's necessary and well respected and appreciated. But we also know that as in any disaster, after a while that dries up and the state has to have a standing facility to continue to provide the service. So it's necessary that we start that transitioning in anticipation of what is going to happen. And to facilitate that further, we're going to eventually move away from the distribution of packages to, first of all, a coupon or a card system once we get the shops and stores up and running. And then eventually that will be rolled into an augmented path program where persons who are in need of this kind of relief over an extended period of time can be supported seamlessly. All right? So we are trying to return to normalcy as quickly as possible. For that to happen, we need to support businesses. And what is the purpose of a business? Purpose of a business is to make a profit. So government has to be very careful in how it supports business. Yes, there may be times when government gives a grant and there are considerations as to how we can help. I know the DBJ is considering how we can help businesses get back on their feet, and government is considering how that will work. In another press briefing, we will go into more details about that. But in my last press briefing, I mentioned, and pardon me for thinking that it would be readily understood by all, that we would support profit-making entities by loaning them generators or Starlink communication devices so that they can start operations, so that we can transition from everyday packing a bag, loading it on a truck, driving it to an area, then we have to have security to protect it, and then we have to take the soldiers to go out and give it, to a simpler way, which gives people dignity. They don't have to go and stand up in line and waiting to get. Secondly, gives people choice, because you start to hear it already. You know, tired of what is in the bag. All right, no, I don't want any more bag. Carry something else, come. And we start to hear that coming already. So transitioning back to normalcy restores dignity. It gives choice. But the biggest thing for us, the biggest advantage, it gives accountability. Let me be clear. All of what we have given out so far, the accountability rests on what countries have given to us and what we have recorded in our stores and what we have given out to persons who we expect to give out to others. We have no record of the end beneficiary because we have not asked for any identification. We have not asked for anybody to provide their TRN. In this phase of the relief, it's about just getting the food out there, getting the care packages out there to people. Because were you to do that, you would see an avalanche of misinformation, which we saw coming out. So we have made sure that we have moved the products, the humanitarian supply, into the community as quickly as possible. But that can't go on forever. Once we start to make huge expenditures on humanitarian relief, we must be able to give a certain level of certainty that the expenditure went to the beneficiary. And so we need a system where that can be done. And the voucher systems or the cards provide that kind of support. So for that to happen, we need shops to get back up, and we need the ATM machines to start working. We need the remittances, the remittance houses that you can go and collect your remittances. We need those to start operating again, so we get back to some level of normalcy, so that we can have the transparency and the accountability that everyone is calling for, without understanding the dynamics that you have to first put in place in order to achieve that. And so we are well on our way working with that. Minister Hill has been tasked with doing this. He has so far identified 48 business entities in 2 of the affected parishes. They're seeking to expand that rapidly. And we will, through the program that I have announced, provide through a loan the facility. These are profit-making entities, the facility for them to stand up their operations so that they can have electricity. They could get a refrigerator. We could help them with a Starlink, or maybe their roof is off. We could help them restart. So there is that facility where it's either a grant or a loan, and that is being worked out. I know the private sector is also doing similarly, and that is being coordinated with Mr. Keith Duncan at the lead of the coordination between the private sector and the government, in terms of just trying to get the regular business, private sector supply chain up and running in communities. And as I'm on generators, again, I thought it would be obvious. But these days, I learn not to take everything as obvious. You have to explain in excruciating details, because there are those who either don't know or are deliberately trying to confuse. And let me explain in excruciating details. There are 900,000 Jamaicans impacted. 150,000 houses. So far, Minister, you can recall how many generators we have gotten? It's less than 1,000. 500. Now, all of the smart people who are talking about how we use the generators, how do I decide who gets out of the 900,000 people who could claim 500 generators? I keep saying to people, do not listen to the mischief and nonsense. And as your Prime Minister, my job is to make sure that you have the information. You can do with it what you want, but the record must be there, so that those who are vested in mischief, who carry information falsely with malice, that you can counter them. So a lot of the nonsense you hear, you can dismiss it. 500, it's less than 560 generators so far. None of those generators will be used in the program I just mentioned, which is to provide a loan or a grant to businesses that we're trying to stand up to ensure that the private sector supply chain starts to operate. All of the generators that we have been given through private donations or through bilaterally from other states will be used to build resilience in the public operations. In that way, we guarantee that the benefit of the 500 is multiplied to benefit everyone. So what we have done, we have said that we're going to give the generators and other such items that build resilience, we're going to give them to our police stations that now don't have. So out of this, what we intend to do is to ensure that every police station that is built or under construction now, or that currently exists, we're going to make sure that they have a generator. But it's not just giving them. They will have to provide us with a system of maintaining it, so that when this generator goes, it is replaced. So that we can now say, when we are hit by another disaster, our police stations have backup capabilities. If you go into any of the communities that have been badly hit, where are people gathering to get their phones charged and to get communications? They are going to either the police station, the municipal office, the fire brigade. So we're going to provide as many of these generators, providing they meet the required specs, to these operations, to the emergency services and the critical services. And that's what we've been doing. I personally have given to 3 police stations. And the people there are very happy to have it, because that's where they go to get some electricity to charge their phone and have safety in making their calls. And I know that the same thing has been done with the Starlinks that we have gotten, that they have been used to give to hospitals, the police station, the fire brigade, and so forth. So that's how we are using it. And that's the smartest and best way to use it, to ensure that the average person benefits from these donations. And I'm sure that our donors would be far more satisfied to know that these are used in the public good and not given to private persons. So I think I've covered quite a bit there. Let me transition to one last thing here. Well, there are two important things that we have to discuss before I complete my presentation. I want to talk a little bit about electricity. Immediately after the disaster, I believe we were at about 23% of the island having electricity. Today, we are at 70%. 70% of Jamaica is with electricity, and that is increasing every day. The lessons learned from Beryl have paid off, and the JPS is working assiduously to bring electricity back to areas that have been affected. I can only ask for the patience of Jamaicans. I know it is incredibly frustrating when you don't have any electricity and you just look across the road and your neighbor has electricity and somehow you feel that the system will fight against me. I assure you that is not the case. I can't explain to you the technical issues, but I figure it has something to do that not everyone is on the same grid and connected to the same supply. And so it does take time to get all the various grids back up. All right, but I'll leave that to the JPS to explain. Now, we gave JPS a challenge 2 weeks ago. We gave JPS a challenge. And the challenge was that they should get Montego Bay, the second city, the second main commercial hub of the island, up and running by December 15th. That's the challenge. And I'm pleased to say that the hip strip has electricity. I gather that there was quite a crowd watching on big screen the football match last night. I believe it was in the Montego Bay proper, probably in the square that they were watching it. So electricity, I gather, is there, and almost every day communities within Montego Bay proper and surrounding are getting electricity. So the intention is that by the 15th of December, the tourism hub of Jamaica, Montego Bay, should be electrified. So by the 15th, December the 15th, we should expect that the Elegant Corridor should get full electricity. That's the challenge, and they are working assiduously towards this, and I'm giving them as much support as I can to ensure that this is done. I want to say a little bit more on electrifying the tourism hub. I've tasked Minister Bartlett and Minister Mackenzie to bring together all the permitting and approval entities along the tourism corridor. And we consider the tourism corridor from as far as St. Elizabeth, Treasure Beach, coming all the way around into going through Westmoreland, Hanover, going all the way around, going into Trelawney that have been impacted. So all of those parish councils and all the other entities that are responsible for permitting and approvals, for them to create a fast-track committee to give approvals to all the hotels that are deciding and are now in the process of rebuilding. In other words, what I'm satisfied with is that the hoteliers are ready to rebuild. Some of them will have insurance. Some of them are going to consider this an opportunity to rebuild and make their plants better. Government should not be an obstacle in that, because the longer the hotels stay out of operation unnecessarily, the greater the threat to employment and revenue. So the Minister Mackenzie is telling me that they met on Friday, that there is general agreement, and the logistics of how that will be done. I'm expecting that by Monday we'll have a report. And I say to the tourism sector, get ready. I suspect you are already, but we are here to support you to get back on your feet bigger and better. We want to get the tourism sector moving. This same principle will be applied to other businesses. But what we want to do is just to get the tourism stuff out of the way, because that's quick, and then we will apply that same principle. So the tourism resilience corridors I have defined, starting from Treasure Beach in St. Elizabeth, going all the way around to Falmouth in Trelawney, they will be the beneficiary of an accelerated permitting and approvals process to get them started, along with, of course, having electricity. Currently, JPS has 600 linesmen and with their equipment in the island. Some of those linesmen will leave shortly. On the general trajectory, you know, it could be as long as 6 months before electricity is returned to every community in Jamaica. Thankfully, we are at 70% now. By the 15th of December, we may very well be at, you know, maybe 75% or more. But that last mile in the particularly devastated area, that is going to take a lot of time. So there are two things that you trade off. It's time and resources. So if you use less resources, it takes a longer time. If you use more resources, it may take a shorter time. So we are working with JPS to bring in more resources so that it takes a shorter time. We are of the view, based upon JPS's assessment, I will leave them to give you the details, that they could shave 2 to 3 months off total recovery if they have the resources up front to deal with the recovery. So they want to have 900 linesmen, which would mean bringing in an additional 300 linesmen. And so the government is working with them to see that we can get this done so that we can get electricity back much faster than is projected. And if we get electricity back quicker, then water comes back quicker, communities start to normalize, we're in a better position. So I want to just update the nation on that we are seeking to move very quickly to restore your electricity. We are at 75% now, 70% now. By December 15th, we could very well be at 75%, and we are working as quickly as possible to get to full restoration. Housing and shelter. Now, this is what I know most Jamaicans want to hear about. Now, as was said before by Leela, this is the largest devastation in the recent history of Jamaica, certainly in our independence history. No government has ever had to deal with the magnitude of this kind of devastation. $8.6 billion, 8.8. So, you know, we had estimated in the first tabletop assessment 6 to 8, but the recent rapid assessment done, which is called the grade assessment, you are now saying it's $8.8 billion. And again, we are saying that is conservative. And as the final PIOJ is in charge of doing the final assessment, we'll get what that figure is. Now, I know when the country hears 8.8 billion US dollars, there are those who may say, boy, this is the reggae boys match all over again. No, there's victory in sight. There's hope. There's victory inside. There's victory inside. Yes. Not all of that $8.8 billion, or whatever it may end up being when the final assessment is done, is on the account of the government. A large part of that would be private assets that have been destroyed. The hotels, we've seen some farms destroyed, manufacturing, private homes. Some of these are insured. So there is likely to be an inflow of insurance resources to treat with those. The residential structures that are destroyed, it couldn't be expected that the government will assist in the rebuilding and reconstruction of 150,000 homes. There are some Jamaicans who already have rebuilt their homes in terms of putting on their roofs, and they're not waiting on government. And they're going to go ahead, and they may not have it. They might very well be, poor persons who just don't have it, but they are independent people, and they're just not going to wait on government. They're going to go ahead and do what they can. And then there are those who simply do not have the resources to rebuild. And the government will have to assist in that. They simply just don't have it. So you have the two extremes. Those who are independent and who will move ahead, and those who are completely dependent on the resources of the state to assist. And then there are some in the middle who have some of it, but they need government's help to get them along the way. So that gives you the kind of shape as to how government will respond. For those who have it and are going to independently repair their homes, repair their businesses, government must not stand in the way. Accelerated processes for the rebuilding. For those who need partial help and support, we will have to have a system in place where the cases are properly assessed and there is a mechanism that provides the assistance. And then for those who definitely can't do it, don't have any support, then we will also have to consider, in addition to the rebuilding support, we have to consider some relief support for them. So in the first phase, the goal is to quickly stabilize households and make damaged homes livable with longer-term rebuilding plans, while longer-term rebuilding plans are put in place. And so this will include distribution of shelter kits, heavy-duty tarpaulins, shrink-wrap roofing solutions, and emergency repair materials. And that will be provided to those persons who, by our assessment, we know they definitely cannot rebuild. That assessment is underway. The Minister of Labor and Social Security has reported to me that they have done just over 16,000 assessments across the island so far. So they have a little way to go, but we're going to ramp up, as I said earlier, the core of assessors so that we can do this very rapidly. But remember when I spoke of the supply chain that JDF has established? We're going to use this supply chain to bring the materials in and to distribute them to those who are in need. So it's a repurposing of the supply chain, as I had said, to now go and do this level of rebuilding and supporting the relief. We have examined pre-built, containerized modular solutions, and we have settled in our minds that this is appropriate for the Jamaican situation that we now have. There are different types, different versions. And so I've met with the NHD, and the NHD has provided us with a solution that they are presently working on. At a later stage, we'll go into more details, but the plan is for, in the initial phase, for the NHD to purchase 5,000 container homes. And those will be, some of them will be for sale. So with a program with the NHD, you will be able to purchase. Some of them will be used to build housing schemes, which you can purchase. And a portion of them will be made available through social housing. The government itself will also be purchasing some of these containerized housing solutions, which will be made available through the social housing modality. So effectively, we have to do a rapid deployment of housing solutions. And the easiest way to do this is to use the containerized solutions. They do take some time to arrive in Jamaica. There's just certainly not the quantity to make an impact. So we have met and discussed it. We have taken the policy decision that these can be used. And so the process of acquiring them through the procurement process, they have been given the approval to move ahead with that. So that should start in short order. You know, we are not going to get them here for Christmas. I just have to be frank with everybody. But we should start to see some coming in by late January. And those that come in initially, we are going to be looking at the worst cases assessed to make them available. For Christmas and for the initial stages, we're going to have to try to do the shelter repair kits, the heavy-duty tarpaulins, and those kinds of solutions, in addition to the rebuilding, the actual putting on roofs and so forth, as much of that as we can in the coming weeks leading up to Christmas. But the containerized solution does take some time. The shipping is between 30 to 90 days, just that alone. Then there is some procurement and other administrative and bureaucratic things that might take up the time. So we're really trying to cut it as quickly as possible, as short as possible. But even with the best efforts, there may be some challenges. Yes, the government will give rebuilding grants. I cannot say how much those will be or the categories right now. I mean, we have decided on the category. The burial framework will apply: minor, moderate, and severe. But that needs an assessment. And so that's what is kind of holding us up, why we can't pay yet. Now, we're not going to wait until we have assessed every single house. But we do need to reach a critical threshold where we begin to see how the damage is stacking up from a statistical point of view. So we know how much to allocate for minor repairs, how much to allocate for moderate repairs, and how much to allocate for severe. And we actually need the report so that we can establish the threshold. What exactly is minor? What exactly is moderate? And what exactly range is severe? So we're not yet at that threshold. I suspect by the time we reach 30,000 assessments, you would start to see the kind of repetitive nature of the damage, and so you can establish what the thresholds are. So we should get to 30,000 very, very soon, based upon the work that ODPEM is doing in expanding its core and coordinating, and the work already being done by the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the reconstruction of Jamaica. Like most, when the disaster struck, I said, whoa, how are we going to manage this crisis? But as you start to delve into it, yes, it is a challenge. Yes, it is a crisis. But it is also an amazing opportunity. And I want all Jamaicans to begin to think about the crisis in the sense of an opportunity. You had put on your roof and you didn't put on the hurricane straps. Well, and of course your roof was blown off, or maybe it wasn't. But when you're putting on back the roof, or when you look at your neighbor's roof gone, and yours somehow was spared by a divine intervention, now is the time to put on those hurricane straps. I know that there are many Jamaicans who will be saying, no more zinc for me. I'm going totally slab. Before you think about slabbing your roof, make sure that the structures can support it. And in fact, Minister of Local Government, I think we may very well need to have a campaign to go around and inform the public, those who are reconstructing, that there are some engineering requirements for putting on slab roofs, because you don't want to replace one disaster with another, right? So that needs to be addressed. So as we transition into the recovery phase, we have also commenced preparation for the rebuilding and construction phase. As said before, the World Bank's rapid damage assessment has quantified physical damage at 8.8 billion US dollars. This figure includes damage to public and private property, but does not include economic losses and the cost of recovery. It is the cost of what was there before Melissa, and it does not include any premium on building back better or stronger. While this estimate will no doubt be refined by more detailed assessments, it is unquestionable that Hurricane Melissa is the deadliest natural disaster to hit Jamaica in over 70 years. In absolute terms, the cost of the damage is the highest of any hurricane in Jamaica's recorded history. This means the rebuilding effort will be the largest in Jamaica's modern history. Existing government structures, procedures, rules, and regulations are not designed for capital reconstruction at the emergency speed and scale required. Our traditional decentralized ministry by ministry and agency by agency approaches and procurement and public investment rules, while appropriate in normal times, I don't believe so, were not designed to meet the scale and speed that will be required to implement an effective post-Melissa recovery in any practical time frame. Furthermore, having each agency or ministry of government mount its own reconstruction would, over the longer term, cannibalize operational capacity and further affect the delivery of public services. In addition, a fragmented ministry by ministry approach will not easily scale to meet the magnitude of the reconstruction challenge. We therefore need a dedicated reconstruction apparatus. The government will therefore establish the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, NARA, a statutory body with special powers to lead, coordinate, fast-track, and oversee national reconstruction, reporting directly to the Office of the Prime Minister. The NARA will focus on building back better, safer homes, climate-resilient infrastructure, better land use planning, relocation from high-risk zones, and taking the opportunity to introduce new industries and new businesses to areas that previously had no economic base. There is national and international precedence for this approach. It has been used in large-scale disasters, for example, in New Orleans in 2005 after Hurricane Katrina, in Canterbury, New Zealand after the Christchurch earthquake, in 2011, and also in Japan in 2011 after the earthquake and tsunami. In Jamaica too, Prime Minister Pattison established the Office of National Reconstruction after Hurricane Ivan. The ONR, as it was called, was set up as a special unit to coordinate relief and reconstruction. It was not established by an act of parliament. The NARA will be much larger in scope, obviously, and scale, and established under special purpose legislation. Given the extraordinary powers that will be sought to expedite reconstruction, the NARA will be set up with a sunset date of 5 years, renewable by Parliament. So we're not seeking to have this established forever. It is a time-bound exercise, and it has to be time-bound so that we can actually meet the recovery and reconstruction date. If you leave it unbounded, people will believe that they have forever to achieve the targets. The authority's administrative expenditure will be financed from the national budget, as other agencies are. However, recovery and reconstruction activities will be financed initially from the National Natural Disaster Recovery Fund, the NNDRF. The NNDRF was set up to receive the proceeds of Jamaica's disaster risk instruments, including Jamaica's catastrophe bond, policies with the Caribbean Catastrophe Reinsurance Facilities, CRIF, and various credit contingent claims with the IDB and the World Bank. These amounts will total approximately $650 million US. It is likely that the government of Jamaica will have to borrow to finance reconstruction beyond what will be available in our NNDRF. We have immediate access to approximately, and please note I use the word approximately, $500 million US from the IMF's Rapid Financing Facility, the RFI. The RFI facility does not come with policy conditionality. So we will start this reconstruction effort with approximately $1.15 billion US in immediate funds. This is significant. To dimension this, under normal circumstances, it would take us 3 fiscal years to spend such funds in capital expenditure under normal circumstances. But let me just say this, because again, there is a lot of misinformation which is suggesting that the government of Jamaica is receiving huge sums. I would want, if it is possible, to display the grade assessment of damage, and just to look at what the infrastructure damage is. Just infrastructure. That's the one that you can say it's absolutely public, and I believe that was about $2.3 billion. If you can display that very quickly. $2.9 billion of infrastructure damage. That's, you could say that's government's responsibility totally. And then there is a part of residential that would be government as well. And then there is a part of private, meaning private homes and private facilities that government may also have to assist. And then there is the relief and the recovery expenditure. So we have here a total of $1.15 billion. A part of it is the insurance and the contingencies that we have, and a part of it is immediately accessible debt that we could start But just from the assessment here, which is not the final assessment, there's $8.8 billion of damage for which the government would more likely be responsible for at least half. So there is still a gap that will have to be funded, and that will have to be funded by additional borrowing. So those who are of the view that the government can engage in a spending spree, thank God they are not the government. The government has to be frugal. It has to be careful. It has to watch now more than ever. It has to watch every dollar that is spent. Because yes, we are in a good position, no doubt. We have never been in a position where a disaster struck and we don't have to be scrounging around to find $1.1 billion. We have it there. To start, we can start. That is because of the fiscal management of the government that built resilience in our fiscal affairs. But we are not out of the woods yet. And every dollar has to be carefully thought of. It speaks to a national psyche that the country must develop. If you can stand on your own 2 feet, stand on your own 2 feet. If you can help someone, help someone. Let the government focus on helping those who can't help themselves. Let the government focus on rebuilding the infrastructure that is for the public benefit. That must become the psyche of how we are going to get through this. So the NARA, the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, will have special powers to accelerate planning approvals, procurement, public investment and implementation, reducing delays for priority reconstruction projects in designated special reconstruction areas. We will establish a high-level public-private advisory board, and that, we won't announce who the chairman will be, but it will have on it some of our elder statesmen, persons from civil society, technical persons. Certainly we will invite some of our multilateral and overseas partners to sit on it to give us advice and to help. But it will be a multi-stakeholder board that will ensure that we are making the right decisions. There's transparency and accountability. But more importantly, in the info disaster that is going on, we will need voices other than the government to explain some of the decisions that we will have to make. Because regardless of what we do and how we feel that we're making the right decision, Jamaica is a democracy. And ultimately, you want the people to understand what you're doing, appreciate it, and give their support. So we are not going to move ahead and leave the people. We're going to take the time to engage in conversation, to explain, and to challenge misinformation. As I said, any nonsense that is put up, any misinformation that is put up, we will stand there and challenge it. We will never cower in the face of falsehood. And that has been our position, and we will do it with dignity, and we'll do it boldly as well. So we will also establish an interagency coordinating committee, which will ensure that decisions are made swiftly by the heads of executing entities. And we will engage, this is very important, international EPC and program management partners. EPC, this means engineering, procurement, and construction. So in the normal way of doing these projects, the government will develop the program, they will carry it through some kind of public investment appraisal, and then they will go to procurement to find the contractor, and then they'll find the contractor, then they end up into contracting, and then they start to do construction. What we want is to engage with one single entity that can take the entire project from an enterprise scale and deliver it. And so all the other steps are internal to this entity. So that's the route that we're going, and I believe that that will increase the pace at which we can get these things done. Now, speed of execution will not mean an absence of accountability. On the contrary, the legislation that gives birth to the NARA will incorporate transparency and accountability mechanisms that can provide assurances to the public. The NARA will serve as a proof of concept for a more agile, performance-driven model of public administration. The lesson from this authority: procurement reform, faster execution, data-driven reporting, will inform longer-term reforms to modernize Jamaica's public bureaucracy. So what we learn from this, we will seek to translate this into the wider public bureaucracy. So the NARA will ultimately provide a blueprint for wider public sector transformation, demonstrating how Jamaica can deliver major projects faster, more transparently, and with greater accountability. This approach aligns with the government's broader vision of a modern, efficient state capable of delivering development outcomes at scale. So, ladies and gentlemen, I believe I have covered a broad range of topics that are pertinent to the disaster management. And I hope that the information has been useful, and that as a citizen, you will use this information to counter some of the misinformation and deliberate malicious information that is being circulated in some quarters. But we also hope that this information will give you hope that all is not lost, that there is a brighter future ahead for Jamaica. I hope it will create in you the strength to work even harder at what you're doing to make your efforts successful and count in the ledger of Jamaica's economic progress and growth. So even while half of Jamaica is devastated, the half that is not should work harder, grow faster, and help the other half, while we rebuild the other half to be as strong and resilient as this half. As I close, I say this: the NARA will not only focus on the 5 parishes or the 16 constituencies that have been badly hit. Notice, it is resilience, it is reconstruction, and it is resilience. Kingston, the capital, the KMA, or if you want to say the KMR, needs more investment for its resilience. We can't wait until a disaster, then we say we're going to do the expenditure. So there are some resilience building things that we need to do, and those will also be incorporated in the NARA projects. So ladies and gentlemen, I know it's been a long presentation, but it was necessary. I thank you for your attention and your patience.
Thank you, Prime Minister. That was very, very hopeful. And I heard you at the end saying that we all have our role to play. And that is why, again, Ramesh, I'm going to call you out again because of the work that you've done. The government has been doing a lot of work, and we come here every press conference. You have tons of ministers here that report on what is being done. We're as open as you can find any government be, and actually open to the media. The media can ask us any question in any of these press conferences. But at the same time, we do need the help of others. And Ramesh, you're such a great example. He told me earlier, PM, that he has distributed 10,000 care packages, 2,000 hot meals, 2,000 tarpaulins, ply, hundreds of sheets of ply and zinc. And he's helped 13 homes for the elderly or children's homes, and he's cleared 40 roads. He sounds like an MP. So he's done a lot of work, and that's really what you want to see, those who can helping, and different people can help in different ways. And I want to thank you. He says he wants to help with schools, and so we were meeting right before this, Prime Minister, to talk about the work he is doing to rebuild some of the schools with his own network of individuals. And that's how we're going to rebuild. It's going to be all of us doing what we can to support those who need the support. And before we go to questions, just reminding you that today's International Men's Day. Happy International Men's Day, PM, Minister Mackenzie, Minister Wheatley, everybody, all the men in here, happy International Men's Day. On International Women's Day, PM gave all of us roses, all the women roses. I'm sorry, it's because of the hurricane. We don't have any roses for you men today. But, you know, next year you'll get it from me. So we're now going to open up to questions from the media. I'm looking for the microphone. All right, lady in yellow, hopeful color. We're not hearing. All right, I think this one works.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Good afternoon, everyone. Khaleesi Wright from Nationwide News. I have 3 questions. Concerns have been raised about the widespread mental health challenges that may be faced by citizens due to the severe impact of Hurricane Melissa. What support services have been implemented so far for individuals in severely affected parishes to cope with the psychological impact of Hurricane Melissa? Question 2, Minister Morris Dixon, can you provide an update on the state of children homes across the island and the estimated cost of repairs, if any? And my final question, and this may be directed to Prime Minister Holness, how will the impact of Hurricane Melissa affect the government's pre-election promises? So this includes student loan forgiveness, increase in minimum wage, and the GCT rate adjustment.
All right, thank you for those questions. Minister Mackenzie, do you want to speak on the psychological support? Because I can speak a little bit on the school side, but PM, you want to come first? And then I'll deal with children's homes.
Khaleesi? Very good questions, Khaleesi. Let's start with the psychological and the mental health issues. Now, Minister Tufton, I'm certain, has given a number of updates on this, and so I'll allow him. And the Minister of Education would also have an update because a large part of that would be under her jurisdiction. But one that we tend to overlook is the chaplaincy service of the JDF. And they actually do some amount of support as they go into communities. And so everybody's actually tasked, the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, the JDF with their chaplaincy services, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health. It is something that is now mainstreamed. I wouldn't say it is, at the level that it should be, but there is a greater recognition within the government that you have to treat with the emotional side of the disaster. And so I would say generally that there is a greater sensitivity. And so you will see that reflected in trying to ensure that there is dignity, for example, in how aid is delivered, how people are treated and respected. So I'll just give you an answer from that perspective. The details, I'd leave the other ministers to tell you. as much as possible, we are going to try to keep our commitments from the manifesto. As I said before, we don't want to slow down the development of Jamaica as we pursue the recovery and reconstruction. There are going to be, however, fiscal choices, meaning, do I spend the limited resources now on X, or do I spend it on Y? So the general rule would be, if spending on the election promise is not something that is going to yield immediately greater results than spending it on the recovery or on the reconstruction, then we would go for what yields the greater overall results. And that's why you have a government to, and you can be assured that in the cabinet, you have what you could describe as fiscal conservatives and persons who, I won't describe them in any other way other than they believe that you should spend on the human concerns and so forth. So it's a good balance. So we're going to debate them. And I'm sure that there are some things that we won't do right away and some things that we will continue with. So the short answer to you is that the commitment that we have is to maintain government as much as possible, keep moving forward, to keep the commitments. But if there are trade-offs to be made, we will make the trade-off as what is best for growing Jamaica.
All right, thank you. And PM, just in terms of the children's homes, just noting that the CPFSA has been out visiting all of the children's homes across the country. There are 2 of them that were damaged, and so we're looking at new facilities for those to move the children to new facilities. In terms of children who are in state care but maybe in private homes, so like in the foster care program, the CPFSA has been asked to reach every single family. That has been difficult with the telecommunication challenges that we have, but they have been actively reaching out to the families of the foster children. But all children in our children's homes are accounted for, and so they're all safe, and so that's a very good thing, and we're very happy about that. In terms of psychosocial, in terms of our schools, that's been a priority of ours. When schools open, the focus has been on psychosocial support for our teachers first off, and then they can provide that service to our students. We've been getting a lot of assistance from entities like UNICEF. And our counseling group has been working very hard with our teachers and with the entire school community in terms of talking through all of these things. And the trauma is real. It's real trauma. And some of it will not manifest right away, which is what we keep reminding our stakeholders, that children will seem okay, and it will be months down the line that you will start to see the signs of problems. So we are very alert to it, and our counseling teams, our guidance counselors across the system are working with our schools to ensure that we provide the adequate support that they can. Thank you. All right.
Afternoon, Zara Burton, 18 Degrees North. Just a point of comment. The fact that the ODPEM head just left a while ago and he's the one in charge of this initiative in terms of getting aid to people, I believe it's counterproductive to have these press conferences and for him not to be here at this particular juncture, stepping out like that. So I just want to make that point. The second set of questions.
Okay, ask your questions and then I'll respond.
He said he was going to PAAC,
yes.
But we also have questions in the media, and okay. I don't think that's right. Okay, if I could just also say some questions, please. In terms of the Prime Minister, I'm hoping that you can answer some of these questions. The questions I wanted to direct to the ODPEM head, I would maybe they're on your lap today, but I don't know if you can answer them. We've been asking for very specific information when it comes to the issue of the drops. Kalisha Williams, in one press conference recently, asked about a drop schedule because there's been some concern from people on the ground that they're not getting aid equally. And I know that the Prime Minister just mentioned a while ago that there will be a card system implemented, but in the meantime, there is this concern about aid not being equitable. So we would want to know, for the people who are in the midst of suffering, what can be done to give more specificity on the aid drops so that people can know when to expect what, when and where, and especially the people on the interior who are not getting some of this aid. 2, is there a way to speak about these container homes that the Prime Minister just spoke about? One container, I remember, went flying, according to this guy in St. Elizabeth. And so I'm just wondering if when we spend on these container homes, if that has been looked at, the issue of how strong these container homes will be. 3 for the PM. What about the houses underwater? Will you be rebuilding these currently?
Can you
And
repeat
then
that one about water?
the houses now underwater.
Oh, underwater. Okay.
Yes. Will you be spending money to rebuild these? And then in terms of climate change, there was a vote in October 2 weeks prior to Hurricane Melissa, where the international community was voting whether to delay the implementation of carbon emissions, the reduction and implementation of an initiative to cut carbon emissions from ships. That was delayed for a year by the group, and Jamaica voted to delay it. I wanted to know why we voted to delay that. And also, if climate change is so urgent in Jamaica, why didn't we maybe engage our partners like the United States, China, Saudi Arabia on this particular measure more aggressively instead of delaying it?
Let me try and answer your questions, but I believe I've been saved by Commander Gale, who somehow he heard your voice from as far as the PAAC and materialized here. Come, please join us, Commander Gale. You may be better able to answer some of these questions than I am placed to do. But to say on the matter of the equitable distribution of the humanitarian and care packages, I too have had my concerns, and I too have heard the complaints. Now, when we investigated it, it was not necessarily that there was any malicious intent. In other words, someone decided that they're just going to give aid to one particular community. A lot of it was that because of the informality of our system, there's just some communities that they just don't know. And the MPs have been very useful in pointing out, hey, you have forgotten this community. You have not gone to this community. In that process of bringing communities to attention, you would then get the opinion that these communities were willfully neglected, which is not the case. So what we have said to ADPEM is, listen, go and do a thorough check for every community. Because remember now, there are some communities that may have been informally settled, that there's no formal record of them on a map, or sometimes the parish councils don't even know. But the MPs would likely have general knowledge of the area. And so to bring the two knowledge bases together, what we know formally on our maps and what the MPs and other persons know, we're going to put that now on a solid database so that we can have a systematic delivery, which is what we have started to do. And which is what I said here 2 weeks ago, in response to this very thing, that we need to have a systematic delivery, a proper schedule where every community that has been impacted that needs assistance, that we can get it to them on a routine basis. And that is what Commander Gale has been tasked to do. And I'm not sure if you can give an update as to where we are in building out the number of communities and where we are in terms of reaching the communities that have been impacted. On the climate change issues, I am not prepared in terms of the questions that you have asked, but I could undertake at the next briefing when Minister Samuda has returned and I can have a discussion with him, I will give you some responses on those. We have noted the questions, and so we'll give you the responses on the climate change issues. Oh, the house is underwater. Oh, the container homes. Right. So the questions that you have raised are valid questions about their strength. We've looked at it in a comprehensive way. We have actually had a meeting this morning with the NHT. As I said, at another briefing, we'll go more into housing. But yes, we have examined structural integrity, the environmental health, the materials that are used, the space, heat, and insulation. We have looked at them in a comprehensive way. And so we have, as I've said, we have made a decision that we can go with some of these containerized modular solutions. But we will certainly make sure that the ones that we bring here are structurally sound and environmentally healthy as well for human use. The house is underwater. I've been looking at that. I can't give you an answer right now. Remember now, many of these are private properties. So they would fall under government giving some kind of assistance to recover. So we would have to go and do a case-by-case assessment. Do they have insurance? Did they occupy the land legally? All of these are things that you would have to do before we could make a general statement about how government will help. But you can take it that government will lean forward to give some support to those persons who have been so affected. Thank you.
You can ask one question of him and see he stayed back from PAAC, and also on your NHT question though. I just wanted to note that the NHT is one of the most professional entities you can find, and they're not going to put forward a solution that is not safe for Jamaicans. And I know they've done their work on that one.
Can I just give the updates as PM had asked? Sir, so my very last engagement before coming here, I was sat in a room, UN Ops, starting the special data management team of GIS experts from the JDF, and some others. We were going all this very same issue, Prime Minister. So we're actively working to bring all those communities that we can find, even those outside the SDC boundaries, into that one working template. It will take some time, but it is a work underway. I will say as well that immediately post the blow, just by what we were doing in the NEOC, and based on reports on the ground and early assessments, we were tracking just about 182 SDC communities that were badly affected by Melissa. Today, I believe I indicated that the JDF running through the distribution system for ODPEM would have reached some almost 300 communities already. No, we're speaking about SDC boundaries. The other matters, we're looking into those deeply to get the other settlements and so on going. We're doing the work to bring that together.
Come on, just interrupt from it. It's very important because I realize a gap. I wouldn't want it to appear that the government did not have a spatial map of communities. And you mentioned it. The entity tasked with that would have been the SDC. And so the SDC would have gone around and they would have mapped communities. But the challenge is there are several communities that would have appeared since, or communities that we don't even know existed. And then the other thing is, you may have an area that is geographically defined as a community, but within that geographic definition, there are cleavages. Some people have stick to one area and then another set to that area. So they divide up themselves into different areas. So you may believe you have gone to the community, but when you go there, some people are not coming down the road where you were, and they are staying up the top because as far as they're concerned, that's a different community. And so it does pose a challenge. And so the task that has been given to Command Again, to ODPEM, is to bring all the databases together of communities and let us have one community, one central database. What it does say, however, is that Jamaica needs to move to a properly planned system of address and zonal planning where each community is defined by a kind of zip code. Because to manage a disaster, you need to have this kind of information.
Did you finish or?
Yes, I am.
You did finish. Okay. It still didn't answer the question because the specific question was to what Kelisha Williams asked, I think a week ago, where she asked for a schedule of drops, daily drops. And to the point I also made, I think that day or maybe in one of these press conferences, I don't recall, the issue of the dead being 45 lives lost. There's a lot of, government speak about the dignity of these individuals, and yet we don't know the names of the individuals that have died. And I asked for a list of the names of the dead, if that could be provided, because of the fact that we would want to maybe cross-check you as well for, purposes of, government, public accountability as well, to see if there's a way to cross-check who is on the list, so people can see their loved ones at least, if they're not on the list, to be added. And also on that same point about specificity,
I can't take the other two before we engage. So on the last matter,
end here. This is the last one.
So on the last question you had asked, I believe I did indicate it at that particular time you had asked that we will leave that for the family matters to be discussed. We have it, we have cross-referenced it through our police investigations and so on. So we are fully confident in those matters. They'll be also investigated, but we leave those matters in terms of putting the names out there for the families to treat with. The matter of the schedule, those are up on the ODPEM's website. Tonight, I expect to be able to commit some documentation in signing, so I can have that plus a dashboard committed to the Support Jamaica website. So if you check tomorrow morning, I am 85% hopeful now, just to commit on some work on my end to have that up on the Support Jamaica website with other dashboard details which are public facing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commander. And we are at the end of today's briefing. You heard some very important things, the key highlights, the damage assessment, US $8.8 billion. That's US $8.8 billion. And that doesn't include everything in terms of the loss of tourism revenue and so on. In terms of the debris field, there was a question online about debris, and PM did deal with that. 500,000 truckloads of debris estimated to be in the affected area. The Prime Minister also noted 5,000 containerized solutions being procured by NHT in relation to the shelter question. We get a lot of those online. We look at them, and that's a big question. And they are going to be very good solutions. Again, the NHT is not going to put forward a solution that is not good for the Jamaican context. The Prime Minister also made a very important announcement about NARA, the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, which will be established as a statutory body for 5 years. And so I know that we're seeing there's a lot of despondence. There's a lot of trauma, but there's also hope. The government has already started to look at rebuilding and rebuilding better. This Jamaica that you're going to see is a re-envisioned Jamaica. And so this crisis is here. And I know last night also added to some of the trauma. But today we are starting to look at the future, and we're looking at the rebuilding process. And the Prime Minister has announced this authority, similar to what has happened around the world. And so there is hope. And we end today on that note of hopefulness. This rebuilding exercise will be one that we all Jamaicans can be so very proud of. Where we are already in the recovery is really a testament to the resilience of the Jamaican people, and the rebuilding process will be also a similar testament to who we truly are. And as we end today, as always, we pray for all of those who have been affected. And we know there are many that are hurting. We saw them again on our tours across the country this week. I will not forget passing a house in Anchovy and seeing a pink teddy bear on the line with lots of spots on it anyway, but that's the comfort for a child. And it was nice to see that teddy bear hanging on the line, that mother or family member having washed it for that child, to have them have something to comfort them, something from the past. And there's so many people looking for something to comfort them. And today we're saying to you that we're doing what we can as a government. We have people like Ramesh, and there's so many other of you who are supporting too. And we know, without a doubt, with God by our side, we are going to get through this even better than before. And so as we end, we ask that God continue to bless all those who have been affected, and that God bless Jamaica, land we love. Thank you.
When the game gets rough and this life just seems so tough, make we talk, my people, make we talk. When this town becomes an ugly place, don't let it erase the smile from your face. Make we talk, people, make we talk. Conversation is the key, a guiding light for you and me. Spark a talk and you will see. Conflict solver A to Z. World leaders master the art of self-defense just by talk. So people, make we talk. Hey, we're living in a world that on ourselves we must depend. Make we talk.